Many NBA teams have large fan bases. Take the Lakers or Golden State for instance, with fans all around America. However, these teams only really represent large cities, and have most of their diehard supporters usually located in the city they play in. This is still the case today for almost every team, besides one, Canada's Toronto Raptors, which truly had the whole nation, old and young, watching every second of their 2019 playoff run and win. It wasn't supposed to be this way at first. With the NBA expanding originally into two Canadian markets in 1995, Toronto and Vancouver. Sadly, even having the sickest jerseys in the league couldn't save the Vancouver Grizzlies from folding after 6 seasons, then moving to Memphis due to lack of interest, and the inability to put together a solid team. This left Canada with only one team, the Toronto Raptors, who, unlike the Grizzlies, were able to get past those early franchise struggles by being located in a bigger city with more people to watch the games, and more importantly, drafting future NBA legend Vince Carter in 1998. The years with Vince dunking like a madman and being one of the best scorers the NBA had at the time made Toronto and all of Canada fall in love with the team. And once the Grizzlies had been gone for a while, the Raptors were cemented as Canada's team. The Vince Carter years gave the city and nation an exciting team to watch that was good enough to give the top teams a run for their money. And although legendary for basketball in Toronto and Canada, the team had unfortunately not panned out. As while Vince was an amazing scorer, the best record the Raptors as a team could come up with through his years was a mediocre 47-35, good for 5th in the East and a loss in the conference semis in the 2000-01 season. On top of this, after this season, the team generally got worse year after year, not even making the playoffs for the last 2 seasons of the Vince Carter Raptors. By the time the 04 offseason rolled around, the entire coaching staff of the Raptors had been fired and replaced, and Carter had demanded a trade, eventually finding himself on the New Jersey Nets. This was a traumatic event for the fans of the Toronto Raptors nationwide, with Carter regularly getting booed when he returned to Toronto in another jersey to take on the team he once led. What Vince Carter didn't realize was just how good a young power forward was going to get on that Raptors team immediately after he left. A man who you might have heard the name of, Chris Bosh. He blossomed into a bona fide star leading the Raptors, who could score, block, and rebound with the best of them. But as the story went with Vince Carter, Bosh wasn't able to lead the team further than 3rd in the East, and a first-round exit as the team around him wasn't top tier by any means. And by the time he was a free agent in the 2010 offseason, he signed with the Heat to join LeBron's upcoming super team, and I'm sure you know how that went for Bosh. This didn't devastate Raptors fans as much as the Carter trade, but it did leave a lot of Raptors fans wondering about how good the team could have been if the stars had just stayed and played together instead of leaving for greener pastures. And I'm not gonna lie, the thought of prime Bosh and prime Carter on the same team like they could have been does leave you wondering just what they could have accomplished. Best record in the regular season, a finals appearance, maybe even winning a chip with the right supporting cast? Unfortunately, at this point, Toronto had developed somewhat of a reputation of a team that all good players eventually leave in search of a better situation, which was depressing for the fans, and left the Raptors in a state of limbo for a while. But just like the Carter and Bosh situation, when Bosh was the one leaving, he didn't realize he was leaving behind a rookie shooting guard that would eventually turn into one of the deadliest mid-range snipers in the modern era, and someone who would become one of the most notable faces in Raptors history, DeMar DeRozan. After missing the playoffs for a few years with a developing DeRozan, the Raptors received Kyle Lowry in a trade from Houston, and after a couple more years of developing chemistry, this duo formed the core of the most iconic Raptors team to date. Now, obviously it wasn't the most skilled team the Raptors ever had, but this Raptors team from 2013 to 2018 is truly the team that got most Canadians into basketball. Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan led this team to the top regular season record in the East in the 2017-18 season, and their worst season during this run was 4th in the East. Unfortunately, most NBA fans outside of Canada view the Raptors from this era as the team that LeBron constantly destroyed in the playoffs with ease. Which, fair. But this team was good and exciting enough to captivate millions of Canadians. It was a real homegrown team with multiple players besides Lowry and DeRozan that became embraced by fans, with an underdog vibe in the big playoff matchups that had everyone watching. Unfortunately, in the back of everyone's mind, including the Raptors staff, it was known that this team was not really going anywhere. It had a good run sticking near the top of the East, but definitely had its limitations when running into great players. A chip seemed so close, yet so far, like they just needed that extra little push. This led to GM Masai Ujiri developing a reputation as a great GM by attempting one of the craziest gambles made in NBA history.
Those Lowry DeRozan years cemented a supporting fan base that were starving to finally see their team make that last push into the finals. So after LeBron's Cavs swept the Raps in the 2018 playoffs, GM Bobby Webster and President Masai Ujiri must have realized they were just going to continue spinning the tires in the playoffs with the current core that they had, which seemed to be good timing, or good foresight by the GOAT Masai, as Kawhi Leonard and the Spurs had run their course after Kawhi only suited up for 9 games in the previous season, while asking for a second opinion when the Spurs team doctors cleared him to play without Kawhi himself feeling 100%, which broke all trust between the All-Star and the franchise. So with this opportunity at hand, the Raptors swept in and made an offer that resulted in the franchise sending Jakob Poeltl and the team cornerstone DeMar DeRozan to the Spurs for Kawhi and Danny Green. At the time, this sent the NBA world into a frenzy, with many Raptors fans being concerned over the move. As we said before, Kawhi had only played 9 games in the previous year, and with news of him also expecting to load manage by not playing back-to-back games with the team, it was tough to see this trade as a win, considering fans didn't want to see the all-time franchise-leading scorer leave the team he was so beloved on. In fact, DeMar was loved so much by the franchise, there was also contention from Lowry, who seemed to be upset by the Raptors shipping away his teammate and friend for the past 6 years. But Lowry, of course, didn't bring any of this on the court, embracing Kawhi from day one. In that same offseason, the Raps would make another move that would upset some fans when they fired Dwayne Casey, replacing him with first-year coach Nick Nurse, and also signing Fred VanVleet as a free agent. This new Raps squad started out hot. Even though Kawhi only played 14 out of the possible 20 games in their first month, they ended up going 16-4, while outscoring their opponents by double digits in 13 of those games, showing their early dominance, which carried on throughout the entire regular season with them finishing second in the East, with a record of 58-24. So it was on to the playoffs, where they would face the Orlando Magic in the first round, where they were expected to blow by the team with ease, which seemed a little worrisome after a disappointing Game 1 104-101 loss, which came with heavy criticism that the team responded to in a 29-point blowout in Game 2, helped by an outpouring of 37 points by Kawhi, 22 by Lowry, and an early showcase for Pascal Siakam scoring 19 points and 10 rebounds. Siakam would go on to carry the team in Game 3, with possibly his best performance, scoring 30, 11, and 1, while Kawhi was struggling with an illness. The Raps went on to win the next 2 games, beating the Magic in 5, sending them to round 2 against the 76ers, which was debatably their toughest challenge in this historic playoff run. Starting with their first game, which they were only able to win by a 45-point performance by Kawhi, helped by Siakam dropping 29 buckets. They would lose the next 2 games due to an outstanding performance from Jimmy Butler in Game 2 and another amazing performance from Joel Embiid in Game 3. While also holding the Raps to only 89 points in Game 2. And to make things worse for the Raptors, for Game 4 they were heading to Philly, home with some of the wildest fans in sports. This was a back and forth game that went down to the wire that required a dagger 3-pointer shot from Kawhi to put the team ahead in the final minute to seal the deal, sending them back home for Game 5, where they would blow the Sixers out by 36 points. The Sixers would respond in Game 6, which all accumulated in Game 7, and the shot that was heard around the NBA world that had fans holding their breath for 2 seconds, waiting to see if the ball would trickle in or bounce out. Luckily it fell, and next series, the Raptors had another tough challenge going against Giannis and the Bucks, where they would lose the first 2 games, sending fear into hearts of fans until a double OT Game 3 that restored faith and gave the Raptors a push, helping them win the next 3 games, sending them to the long-awaited finals, where they would face the Golden State Warriors, looking to start their dynasty talks by securing the three-peat. And now that LeBron was in LA without a team that could help him get to the finals, it seemed that their win was inevitable. But the wear and tear of the season ended up catching up to the Warriors, as they lost Klay Thompson in Game 2, and after KD tried to make an early comeback after suffering an injury earlier in the playoffs, ended up suffering another injury in Game 5. But despite this, the Raptors put on an elite performance that the Warriors couldn't keep up with, and after 6 tough-fought games, the Raptors were finally able to break through and win that championship, setting the city and the country into a summer-long celebration, which unfortunately was cut short by the realization of Kawhi's impending future. As everyone knows, after Kawhi gave his all and helped win the city their first ever championship, he unfortunately chose to go back to his home city of LA and finally be in a system he can be happy in. But with Kawhi's departure, there was a hole left in the team that an aging Lowry and a growing Siakam couldn't fill. But the team still made it in the playoffs the following season with help of tremendous coaching by Nick Nurse. But it was clear they were in a similar situation as they were in 2018. So they dumped a bunch of assets. This combined with an irregular COVID season that sent the team to Florida for a year, they dropped down to being one of the worst teams in the East, which ended up being a blessing as they were able to snag up Scotty Barnes. We won't touch on Scotty too much, but if you want to learn more, check out a video on his come up and his expectations. But just know that his pick came along with some genius insight by Masai Ujiri, which he was able to carry into his current variation of the team, with the starting lineup being an elite company, as only one of 7 starting lineups to have all players score 15 plus points on more than 5 occasions. Along with the starting lineup, the team's also comprised of many 3-and-D role players to complement them. They were also able to take Christian Koloko in this year's draft with the 33rd pick, and based off his early flashes in preseason, showed serious potential. And with him being from the same hometown in Cameroon as Pascal Siakam, it's safe to say he'll have a good mentor on the team, along with one of the best development systems in the league, with trainers such as Rico Hines under employment. The Raptors should be in good hands under Scotty, Siakam, and Steady Freddy, while being coached by one of the best Nick Nurse, and having the GOAT Masai keeping an eye on all international talent to develop. Yo, if you like this video, give it a like and subscribe to the channel not to miss another one, and we'll see you on the next upload.